The storm wasn't just a storm. It was a living, breathing beast with a mouthful of ice and a throat full of thunder. I'd been foolish, perhaps even arrogant, to venture so deep into the Blackwood Mountains during late autumn. One moment, the trail was underfoot. The next, it was a blurred memory beneath a fresh, pulverizing blanket of snow. My phone, long dead, was a useless piece of plastic. Panic, cold and sharp, had begun to claw at my throat. Then, through a sudden, eerie lull in the swirling white, I saw it. A cabin, or what was left of one. It was a skeletal silhouette against the bruised sky, listing precariously to one side, its windows like vacant, cataracted eyes. Every instinct screamed danger, turn back, run. But survival screamed louder. The alternative was freezing to death, slowly, painfully, buried alive in the unforgiving snow. The air grew heavy and still as I approached, the silence oppressive save for the distant rumble of the storm regrouping. The structure was a testament to neglect. Shingles peeled back like scabs, a sagging porch groaning under its own weight, a chimney choked with what looked like years of bird nests and decay. A faint, almost imperceptible scent hung about it. Not just old wood and damp earth, but something else. Something metallic and cloyingly sweet, like stagnant blood and forgotten memories. The front door, a warped slab of splintered oak, hung open by a single rusted hinge, groaning an invitation. A gust of wind pushed it further, revealing the inky blackness within. I hesitated, my hand gripping the cold metal of my hiking axe, a futile weapon against the unknown, but a comfort nonetheless. Taking a deep, ragged breath, I stepped over the threshold, into the mouth of the beast. Inside, the cabin was a tomb. Dust motes danced in the sparse light that bled through the grimy windows, caught in a perpetual, silent waltz. The air was colder here, clinging to me like a shroud. The floorboards groaned a symphony of decay beneath my boots, each step raising a cloud of ancient dust. The main room was small, a single fireplace dominating one wall, its hearth choked with cold ashes and a few brittle blackened logs. There was a rough-hewn table, overturned, and two chairs, one snapped in half, the other leaning against the wall at an unnatural angle. No signs of life, not recent ones anyway. Just the pervasive, choking smell of damp rot, and that other, unnamed scent, now stronger, more defined. My immediate task was survival. I managed to right the table, dragging it to the center of the room, away from the drafts. I found a few pieces of dry kindling, mercifully, tucked away in an old, moldering cabinet, and coaxed a small, sputtering fire to life in the hearth. The heat was negligible, but the crackling flames offered a psychological balm against the encroaching darkness. As the fire grew, casting flickering shadows that danced like specters on the peeling wallpaper, I noticed things. Little things. A child's wooden spinning top, half buried in the dust near the hearth. A faded, discolored rag doll propped against a loose floorboard in the corner, its single remaining button eye staring blankly into the room. And then, painted crudely above the fireplace mantel, a symbol. It looked like a tangled knot of thorns, or perhaps a stylized, distorted human figure, its limbs contorted in agony. It was unsettling, to say the least. The storm outside roared back to life with renewed fury, shaking the very foundations of the cabin. The wind howled, rattling the loose panes in their frames, and the snow hammered against the walls like 1,000 tiny fists. I was utterly alone, cut off from the world. A wave of profound isolation washed over me, a feeling so acute it was almost physical. Or was I? A floorboard creaked upstairs. Not the random settling of an ancient structure. This was a deliberate, heavy sound. My blood ran cold. I froze, every muscle tensed, my ears straining over the cacophony of the storm. Nothing. Just the wind. My imagination, I told myself, spurred by fear and exhaustion. I tried to convince myself, but the feeling of being watched was palpable. It crawled up my spine, prickling my skin. I kept glancing at the rag doll, its button eye seeming to follow my movements. though I knew it was just a trick of the firelight. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, a whisper. Faint, dry, like leaves skittering across frozen ground. It wasn't words, just a breathy, drawn-out sssss. My heart hammered against my ribs. I snatched up the axe, its cold weight grounding me slightly. "Hello?" My voice was a pitiful croak, swallowed by the cabin's oppressive silence. No answer, just the storm and the ever-present thrumming of my own terror. The fire, despite my efforts, began to dim, the flames shrinking as if recoiling from an unseen presence. The room grew colder, a bone-deep chill that seeped into my very marrow. I threw more logs on, fanning the embers, but it was useless. The cabin wanted darkness and cold. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Distinct, deliberate, coming from the room directly above me. They were slow, dragging steps, heavy with effort. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape. My breath hitched in my throat. This was no wind-induced creak, no settling beam. This was conscious movement. Paralyzed by fear, I stared up at the ceiling, my eyes trying to pierce the gloom. The symbol above the fireplace seemed to glow faintly in the dwindling firelight, its twisted form more ominous than before. The rag doll. It was no longer in the corner. My gaze darted frantically around the room. There it was, propped against the leg of the overturned table, closer to me. Its single-button eye seemed to bore into me, a silent, malevolent gaze. My hands trembled, the axe a useless weight. This wasn't a living person. This was something else, something ancient and malicious. A child's giggle, faint and chillingly close, drifted from the doorway of what I now realized was a bedroom, just off the main room. It was high-pitched, innocent, yet laced with an unearthly malice that curdled my blood. The air grew thick, heavy with the metallic sweet scent of decay, intensified until it made my stomach churn. "You shouldn't have come," a voice rasped, right beside my ear. It was dry, brittle, like old bones grinding together, yet impossibly loud within the confines of my mind. I screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore from my throat. I scrambled backwards, pressing myself against the rough-hewn wall, my eyes wide with unspeakable terror. The cabin seemed to groan in response, the foundations trembling, the very walls pressing in on me. The floorboards beneath me felt suddenly soft, yielding, like decaying flesh. I could feel a presence in the room, a vast, oppressive weight that stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't just a shadow or a sound. It was a tangible thing, cold and ancient, radiating malevolence. I couldn't see it, but I felt its eyes on me, felt its chilling breath on my skin. The giggle returned, louder now, joined by another, and another, until the room was filled with a chorus of spectral children, laughing at my terror. The long night that followed was an eternity of waking nightmares. I huddled in a corner, axe clutched so tightly my knuckles were white, my eyes darting frantically. The cabin was alive. I heard the dragging footsteps overhead, the whispers from every shadow, the incessant mocking giggles that seemed to swirl around me. Sometimes, I felt a cold touch on my hair, or a brush against my cheek. I dared not move, dared not breathe too loudly, convinced that any movement would provoke it, that it was merely toying with me. Sleep was a distant, impossible fantasy, my sanity frayed at the edges. I prayed for dawn, for the sun to banish the shadows, for the light to drive away whatever unspeakable horror had claimed this cabin. Finally, after what felt like an eon, a sliver of gray light pierced through the grime of the window panes. The sounds began to recede, the whispering faded, the giggles softened to a distant murmur. The oppressive cold began to lift, replaced by a deep, lingering chill that I knew wouldn't leave me easily. I didn't pause to think, didn't dare to look back. Scrambling to my feet, my muscles stiff and screaming in protest, I stumbled towards the open doorway. The storm had died down, leaving behind a silent, pristine world of white. I plunged into the snow, my legs burning with exertion, running, not caring where, just away. Away from the cabin, away from the unseen horrors, away from the pervasive dread that still clung to me like a second skin. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, until the cabin was a distant, forgotten speck, swallowed by the vast wilderness. I survived. But I knew, with a chilling certainty that would forever haunt my waking hours and invade my darkest dreams, that I hadn't left it all behind. Something had touched me in that cabin. Something had breathed its cold, ancient breath into my very soul. And a part of that chilling darkness, I feared, had followed me out into the world. I wasn't alone in that cabin, and I would never truly be alone again.